All right, so welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that I think is really important for, well, everyone to understand at least a little bit better, even if you're not directly affected by it right now. Life can change pretty quickly, and it's better to be prepared. Why?
Absolutely. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we're diving into universal credit in the UK, and to do that, we've got two really fascinating sources. Information from Citizens Advice and, of course, the UK government website itself.
Should be interesting to see how those perspectives maybe differ or complement each other.
Right. I mean, even just glancing at these resources,
Yeah.
like one thing that immediately jumped out at me was how much Citizens Advice relies on volunteers. I mean, they have like over 14,000 people donating their time to help others understand things like, energy bills, council tax, and all that. And obviously, universal credit is a big one.
Yeah, citizens' advice is such a crucial resource, especially for folks who might be facing financial challenges or just navigating complex systems. They provide that free and impartial advice that can be, frankly, a lifeline for a lot of people.
Totally. And the gov.uk website, well, they have a whole section dedicated to universal credit. It's clearly a major program. And one thing I noticed was that it's replaced a bunch of older benefits, right? Like child tax credit, housing benefit, income support, even some types of job seekers allowance and employment and support allowance, working tax credit. That's a big change. What was the thinking behind that? Do you know?
Well, the government's stated aim was simplification, right? I mean, instead of having to deal with all these separate benefits, they wanted to create one single payment, universal credit, with the idea that this would be easier for people to manage and understand.
Easier to manage, okay.
Yeah.
But I can already see how that might be, well, debatable, right?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely been a lot of debate about whether that goal has actually been achieved.
Yeah, I bet. So, like, with this big shift, there's obviously a transition period, right? And the website mentions something called a migration notice that people receive, which tells them they need to switch over to universal credit. What happens if someone misses that notice or just doesn't quite understand what they need to do?
Yeah, that's a critical point. The government is gradually moving everyone over to universal credit, and people get this 3-month window to make the switch once they receive their migration notice. But the catch is, if they miss that deadline, they risk losing their financial support.
Oh, wow, that's a tight time frame. So it's really, really important that people are aware of this whole process, right?
Absolutely. I mean, seeking help if they need it's essential.
And that's where organizations like Citizens Advice become even more vital, right? Because they can step in and help people understand what this transition means for them, make sure they don't fall through the cracks.
Exactly. Guidance through the application process, help with the paperwork, and if there are any issues, they can advocate for people.
So it's not just understanding the rules, it's actually getting through the process itself.
Okay, another thing that really struck me was how receiving universal credit can affect other benefits you might be getting. The website says some benefits continue, like PIP and carer's allowance, but others might be reduced. How does that all work?
It's pretty complicated, to be honest, and it really depends on each person's specific situation. See, universal credit is what they call means tested, meaning the amount you receive depends on your income and savings. So if you're getting other benefits, the amount of universal credit you qualify for might be adjusted.
So it's not just a simple swap from one benefit to another. There's a whole calculation going on behind the scenes.
Right. And understanding all those nuances, it can be tricky, especially for people who aren't used to dealing with these kinds of government systems. Again, that's where getting advice from Citizens Advice can be so valuable. They can explain how everything works, make sure you're getting what you're supposed to.
Basically, anyone going through this transition should probably talk to Citizens Advice, right? Just to be safe. I'd say it's definitely a good idea. It can prevent a lot of headaches and potential problems down the line. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Couldn't agree more. This is already feeling a bit like walking a tightrope. One wrong step, and things could get pretty messy, financially speaking.
That's a good way to put it. And I think that highlights why we're doing this deep dive, right? To shine a light on these potential pitfalls and emphasize how important support systems like Citizens Advice are.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a major change to the UK benefits system here, and it's crucial that people understand what's going on and what it means for them.
Exactly. It's about individual lives being impacted by these big policy decisions and understanding both sides of that coin. That's essential for having a truly informed perspective.
Yeah, it's like we can't just focus on the numbers and the rules, right? There are real people behind all this.
Right, exactly. And their stories matter, Their experiences can really highlight how these policies actually play out in people's everyday lives.
And Citizens Advice seems to get that. Like they're not just about the technicalities of benefits, it's about the bigger picture.
It's like a holistic approach, you know what I mean? They understand that financial well-being, it's connected to so many other things, mental health, job prospects, you name it.
It's all intertwined. And that's reflected in like the wide range of issues they cover. It's not just benefits. They have stuff on debt management, consumer rights, problems at work. The list goes on and on. They even have resources about the cost of living crisis, which, well, that's pretty huge right now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with prices going up like they are and, all the financial pressure people are under, having a place to turn for reliable information and support, that's essential. Citizens Advice is really stepping up to provide that,
Yeah.
helping people figure out their options and make, informed decisions.
Something else I noticed, both the Citizens Advice website and that gov.uk page on Universal Credit, they offer their stuff in Welsh and also in easy-to-read formats.
That's pretty cool, right? Makes it accessible to more people. It's fantastic. I mean, accessibility is crucial for any public service, but especially when it comes to something as important as benefits. You want to make sure language or reading ability, those things don't prevent anyone from understanding their rights, or getting the help they need.
Yeah, totally. Okay, speaking of understanding rights, can we, break down how universal credit actually works? We've been saying means-tested benefit, but in practice, what does that mean?
Okay, so basically it means the amount of universal credit you get, it's calculated based on your specific situation. Your income, how much you have in savings, housing costs, whether you have kids, any disabilities, that kind of stuff. They have a formula and it can get pretty complicated.
So it's not just a standard payment everyone receives. It's tailored to each person.
Right. In theory, it's supposed to be more responsive to people's individual needs, which is a good thing. But yeah, the whole calculation thing can be confusing for people, especially if they aren't used to dealing with government stuff, which is another reason why Citizens Advice can be so helpful. They can walk you through it, make sure you're getting the right amount.
Gotcha. So is there a specific set of rules about who actually qualifies for universal credit?
In general, you got to be a UK resident, over 18, although there are some exceptions to that age thing, and you can't have too much income or savings. Then there are more specific rules depending on your circumstances, like if you work or if you're self-employed, if you have kids or a disability. And it's important to know, even if you have a job, you might still qualify for universal credit, especially if you're not earning much.
So it's not just for unemployed people. Okay, that makes sense. It's like a safety net for anyone struggling no matter why.
Exactly. It's designed to ensure everyone has at least a basic level of income, and to support them, whether they're looking for work or dealing with something unexpected that's knocked them off course.
Seems like a lot to wrap your head around, to be honest.
It is, and the system isn't even static. They keep changing the rules, adding new regulations. That's why it's so important to stay informed and, reach out to those trusted sources like Citizens Advice for guidance, especially if your situation changes or you think you might want to apply for universal credit.
Okay, good point. It's not just a one-time learn it and you're done kind of thing.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears a bit. We were talking before about this whole transition process, how the government's migrating everyone to universal credit. How's that actually happening?
It's being rolled out in phases, and different areas of the UK are moving at different speeds. Like we talked about, people get that migration notice when it's their turn. They usually have about 3 months to claim universal credit, and during that time, their current benefits will usually keep going.
So there's a bit of a buffer, a grace period to get things sorted. But what if someone misses that deadline or just doesn't finish their application on time?
Well, that's where things can get a bit dicey. If they don't claim universal credit within those 3 months, their other benefits will stop. And that could mean a gap in their financial support, which can be really rough for people, especially those who are already struggling or have trouble navigating the online application process.
So timing is crucial here. Missing that window could have, serious repercussions.
Absolutely. It really underlines how important it is to be aware of what's going on, to understand those deadlines, and to seek out help if they need it.
And again, that's where Citizens Advice can be such a lifeline. They can help folks through that transition, explain all the steps, and prevent those potential problems.
Exactly. They act like a bridge. Connecting the complexities of the system with the people who are trying to navigate it, making sure people have the information and support to make that transition as smooth as possible.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about why universal credit exists, how it's calculated, who qualifies, the whole transition from those older benefits. Honestly, it's a lot to take in.
It really is. And that's precisely why resources like Citizens Advice are so crucial. They help people understand their options and make informed choices. I mean, they're doing amazing work in breaking down this complex system and empowering people to navigate it.
They're like, I don't know, the Sherpas of the UK benefit system.
That's a great analogy. They've got the knowledge, the experience, and the compassion to help people get where they need to go.
Totally. But it's not just about the practicalities, is it? There's a human side to all of this.
Yeah.
How does a system like universal credit actually impact people's lives, I mean, on a deeper level?
That's the key question, right? And it's one we're going to delve into next. We need to understand not just the mechanics of universal credit, but also what it means for people, for their well-being, for communities.
It's like we've built this model of how universal credit works,
Yeah.
right? But now we need to zoom out and see how it fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly right. Because we've talked about the rules, the processes, but those are all interacting with real people, real lives.
And those lives are messy and complicated, right? It's not just about ticking boxes on a form.
Absolutely. Behind every application, there's a story, a set of circumstances that led them to this point. For some folks, universal credit might be a lifesaver. It might provide that stability they desperately need when things get tough. But for others, it might feel like just another hurdle to overcome, especially if they're already dealing with other challenges.
It makes me think about the long-term effects of this whole shift to universal credit. Like, we talked about that initial transition, but what about the ripple effects? How has this changed the landscape of, social support in the UK?
That's a really big question. And honestly, I don't think anyone has a definitive answer yet. It's still relatively new, this system, so it's too early to say for sure what the long-term impact will be. But there are definitely some trends emerging, some things researchers are watching closely.
Like what?
Well, some studies are suggesting that universal credit may be linked to things like, increased use of food banks or problems paying rent in certain areas, which is obviously concerning. But then others argue that, hey, it has simplified the system, made it more efficient. So there are these different perspectives on how it's playing out.
So more data needed,
Yeah,
right?
right.
More time to see how it all settles.
Exactly. And not just data, but listening to people's experiences, hearing those stories from the ground level, that can help us understand what's working, what needs to be adjusted.
And that's where, again, Citizens Advice plays such a crucial role. They're not just giving out information, they're gathering those insights, those firsthand accounts of how universal credit is affecting people's lives.
Right. They're on the front lines. They see the system in action day in and day out. And that perspective is invaluable. It can inform policy decisions, help shape a system that truly meets people's needs.
Okay, so for our listener who's been with us on this deep dive into universal credit and, of course, the amazing work that Citizens Advice does, what are the key things we want you to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, remember, knowledge is power. Understanding how the system works, what your rights are, the resources available to you, that can make all the difference.
And don't forget, you're not alone in this. Citizens Advice, they're there for you every step of the way. Seriously, if you're facing a change in your situation, thinking about applying for universal credit, or even if you just have questions, reach out to them.
They can help you avoid those potential pitfalls, make sure you're getting all the support you're entitled to. Ultimately, it's about empowering people to take control of their financial well-being.
This deep dive, I feel like it's really shown how a system like universal credit, it touches so many lives in the UK. And it's not just a system, it's a reflection of our values as a society, how we prioritize caring for one another, how we support those who need help.
And it's a system that's constantly evolving, right? As we move forward, it's crucial to keep having these conversations, to listen to different perspectives, to work towards creating a safety net that's truly equitable, effective, and compassionate.
So to our listener, we encourage you, don't stop here. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, share your thoughts. Your voice matters.
Keep diving deep. The more we learn, the more we understand, the better equipped we are to build a better future together.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep questioning.